More than a decade ago, I said yes to teaching. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to my channel where I share weekly insights, support strategies, and candid advice about teaching social studies. Also, if you're new to this channel, hi, I'm Cecilia Tamez, and I'm an experienced educator and consultant, and I provide resources, support, and solutions for passionate history teachers like you. So I've actually been wanting to make this video for a while because I hear a lot of new teacher colleagues and some of my mentees, and I remember how daunting it is to even begin to process actually getting to the stage where you're hired as a teacher and you walk into your first classroom and you're the teacher. And if you're stuck in some part of your teaching journey or you're feeling hopeless, I really hope that this video gives you perspective and inspires you to keep going. So first off, my mom was a science teacher for 28 years, so I literally grew up out of school. And one of the earliest memories that I recall where I tell myself that I had teaching experience was when I was a kid and I had early release days at school. My mom would go pick me up. She would stash me in her little back office to read quietly, and she would bring me out during her good class periods, I guess, to help her pass out papers and teach her sophomores the scientific method. I do want to clarify that not everyone has this inclination early on. And if this hasn't been your case, that's okay. Don't discredit yourself as teaching not being your calling. I've had plenty of coworkers that actually came from other fields or started off, in a completely different place and have gone on to become absolutely phenomenal teachers. Now, if you're curious to explore this idea of whether or not teaching is your calling, make sure to check out my video, Becoming a Teacher, and I'll go ahead and link that in the description below and up above so you can check it out when you're done watching this video. Now, unfortunately, because my mother experienced some unhealthy, disillusioning experiences as an educator, she always reminded me that I could be anything I wanted and not to be a teacher. And because I had this natural inclination towards teaching, even though I was keeping an open mind, I still wasn't entirely ready to discard the idea of teaching altogether. Now, aside from my mom, I also had two other very important people that really inspired me in my life and are partially responsible for me having become a history teacher in the first place. And that is my 8th grade history teacher, a young, awesome 22-year-old Teach for America teacher named Nancy, and my very first college professor for my undergraduate history course, a professor named Charles. One of the things that really stuck to me about Nancy's teaching was her energy. So every day when we walk into her class, she would have us chant this phrase in Spanish, con ganas, which translated means to do something with energy, with enthusiasm. Until this day, I still live by this creed as an educator. I still tell my mentees that their energy will literally determine and have a tremendous impact on your classroom. Now, Charles was a storyteller, and even though it's not a requirement, some of the most phenomenal teachers I've ever had, period, have been phenomenal storytellers. And that's mostly because stories stick and they incite emotion and familiarity. And if you want to learn how to apply this strategy to your own classroom, I do have a video about that. It's called How to Teach Without Boring Your Students. And I'll go ahead and link that in the description for you below. If you learn how to market your skills and you know the skills that are valued in a teacher, you can literally figure out how to apply those skills and make them transferable to your teaching resume. So confession time, I was originally a pre-law major and had no intention of studying anything but law, educational law. But after I had my first history course with Charles, I was absolutely hooked, and I changed my major and decided I was going to study history. So I ended up graduating as a history and anthropology major, so I did get 2 undergraduate degrees, and I figured teaching was the only place where I would get to talk about history all day and tell stories and get paid for it. So, that and the job security. So I figured I'm gonna go for teaching. That's right, exactly what my mother told me not to. And some of the background and some of the experiences that I had before going into teaching really helped me beef up my resume, because like I said, if you know what skills are valued in an educator and you know how to market the skills that you have, then literally anything will help. Now, unfortunately, I did realize that I was very much lacking in working with students. I didn't have that experience. I needed to get a job that would give me that experience so that I would look like a stronger candidate. And so about 1 week before I graduated with my undergraduate degrees, I applied to be a library aide. And I did get hired, and I worked at that job for about 1.5 years, and I absolutely loved it. Absolutely loved it. I would have, honest to goodness truth, stayed in that job. But during my time there, I definitely got to practice a lot of skills that I was later able to apply in the classroom. And actually having this permanent position versus something like subbing really helped me to show my work ethic. And this also eventually helped me open doors for my future teaching position. And that's because you give your employers, your school district, the opportunity to see your commitment, your attitude, your skills, and your versatility as a professional in all kinds of circumstances and settings. And this really helps you network with folks who might actually help open doors for you when it comes time to looking for a job or giving you a heads up about a job opportunity that may be opening up. Now, if you need help with marketing the skills and the background that you have, I do have a video called Teaching Interview Simulation, where I share some tips for your teacher interviews and also how you can market yourself best with the skills that you already have. One of the things that I really can appreciate about educators is that, just ask your teacher neighbors and they'll tell you they have all sorts of background experiences. Maybe they came from a different field completely. And I find it so fascinating how they take these skills and actually apply them to the classroom. And they are amazing teachers for doing that, because I feel like it brings relatability to their class and to their students. Which experience do you bring from another workplace that you feel could really help you with teaching? I'd love to hear all about it. Make sure you comment below and let me know. One of the things that I feel teachers most forget when they're looking for a job is we tend to perceive ourselves as we're looking for someone to take us in, when we forget that school is looking for you. School's looking for your skills, for your talent. They've been waiting for someone like you. You just have to show them that you're the one that they've been waiting for. So when I started my job search, it really helped that I had a very clear picture of what I wanted. And this was partially inspired by my mom's work experience. I knew what I wasn't willing to put up with, and I knew what was going to hold me back from really thriving as a first-year teacher. So because I had had a phenomenal experience working at that school district as a paraprofessional, I was determined to come back to that district, but this time as a teacher. Unfortunately, there was a bit of a wait, about 1.5 years between when I started my preparation program and I qualified technically to get a teaching job, and by the time I got my job. Now, this is not to say that I didn't go to other districts and stopped interviewing altogether just because I had my heart set on a specific district. I still went to other interviews and I still sent in applications to districts that I thought would still be a good fit. The thing is, I felt that unfortunately the interviews that I was scheduled for were more of a formality, because just between us, some of those interviews actually were shorter than the time I spent waiting to even go in for the interview. So I just felt like that job had already been given to someone, or they had a candidate in mind, and this was just kind of a formality. So if you're going through this, don't lose heart. I promise you, the right door will open for you. I applied, and I also took it upon myself to email the principal, and I just wrote a super quick email to express my interest, a little bit of my background, and thank you for your time and consideration, and that was that. I did that around probably mid-May, and then after that it was radio silence for about 2 months or a month and a half or something like that. It wasn't until mid-July that I was starting to panic a little bit. Because, I mean, I was literally set to go. I was even 1 month shy of graduating or completing graduate school. And I was ready. I was so ready, at least in my mind, right? And it was already mid-July. I wasn't getting any emails or phone calls. I just thought to myself, by this time, they've already hired whoever they wanted. If they had an opening, they would have called me by now. It was about mid-July when I finally got an email from the principal asking me if I was still interested in a position, which of course I was like, yes. And then the secretary emailed me to ask if I would be ready to come in for an interview the next day. Gosh, when opportunities ring, they come in with a bang. So the good thing about that was I didn't have too much time to get nervous. I literally just had enough time to pick out something decent to wear for my interview. I just showed up with my resume, some letters of recommendation. It was just me and the principal in the office. And that was, I guess, great, although for some people that might be even more intimidating. I've been both interviewed by a group committee and solo. You're still gonna be nervous either way. Just breathe before you speak. Think before you speak, process the questions. And the really hot tip that I have for you that maybe you don't hear too much is don't be scared of the silent pauses after you've been asked a question. Really take your time to process and think about your answer, gather your thoughts, gather your confidence, because that's really important. That will project in your interview. So about 2 weeks later, that was probably the longest wait of my life, I finally got a call saying that I had gotten a Texas history teaching position, which when I say that I was really specific about what I wanted, I already knew that my dream job position was in 8th grade US history, because that's particularly the history I was very passionate about. But I gladly accepted the Texas Studies position. I did not feel like I was compromising on what I wanted, simply because I knew that this was a good starting point for my journey. And also remember that in education, everything can count as a learning experience, even the setbacks. And in this case, I was able to start my teaching journey in a non-tested area, which I'm so grateful for. Also, bless the teachers who start off in a tested area. Y'all are the real MVPs. So that, without knowing it, ended up working perfectly. If you're a college student and you're thinking about going into teaching, or you're a student teacher, say yes to learning opportunities. Think of them as investments. Discern what you want and don't settle. Anything in education can be a great learning opportunity. And remember that the perfect school is waiting for a teacher with your exact talents and skills. If you're a new history teacher that wants to join a supportive group of colleagues that's going to celebrate your wins as you experience your first year teaching, make sure to sign up for my free Facebook group, the History Teachers Lounge, by clicking the link down below. Or consider joining my newsletter for additional tips, information, and strategies for teaching social studies without the burnout. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. Until next time, class dismissed.